Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
Hey everyone, I'm Case Aiken. Now, I want to thank Matt and Jeff for allowing me to bully my way onto yet another side quest episode so that I can talk about a video game that recently came out that I enjoyed, and that is Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Rita's Rewind. So when this game was announced, I was particularly excited for it. I'm a big Power Rangers fan, which is fairly well documented if you have followed me on the internet in any way. But more importantly, I'm also a big fan of classic beat-em-ups. So I, like many, had flashes to recent hits like Streets of Rage 4 or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, and thought that this might be that, but for Power Rangers. But this goes a little bit deeper, because the Power Rangers back in the day didn't have a real beat-em-up like that. I know everyone's going to point to the Super Nintendo games, but I have to remind you that those were beat-em-ups built around linear planes as opposed to the overhead three-quarter perspective beat-em-up a la the classic Ninja Turtles or Final Fight style beat-em-up game. And that's the style of game that we were presented with for Power Rangers Rita's Rewind. So I was excited for this game. And when it finally came out, I checked out some of the reviews and they were not great. And apparently this game launched in a pretty bad state. However, by the time I actually tried it, which was very quickly, we're talking like maybe a week before a patch was released, that apparently fixed all of these like terrible game-breaking bugs. And by game-breaking, I mean like fun-breaking bugs. Like the game was impossibly difficult and in a way that was really frustrating. And that is a thing that is mostly resolved in the version now. So yeah, here's the thing. The game is actually quite interesting. It is a on paper, mostly three-quarter overhead beat-em-up game, again, like the classic Ninja Turtles or Final Fight or Streets of Rage, you know, those kind of games. But then it is also mixed in with vehicle sections. There are sections where you control a motorcycle riding Power Ranger or your individual Zords. And that is probably the spot in the game that has the most uniqueness depending on which character you choose, particularly because Kimberly, who has the pterodactyl, her Zord actually flies. And so it changes the game from like a Space Harrier style ground-based game to more of an Afterburner style, you're flying style. Either way, it feels wonderfully nostalgic and those parts are unique. And then there's the Megazord sections, which in theory kind of play like sort of a Punch-Out type game, but it's more of a button masher based on specific timing. Anyway, the point is the game mixes it up, which is interesting. There's a lot to be said for it, but there's a lot of like little quirks in the gameplay that kind of keep it from being truly fun. For one thing, the enemy attack patterns in those vehicle segments can be either super easy or punishingly difficult. And that's going just on the normal mode, let alone if you go on the harder difficulty settings. There are sections where gameplay is required with very little conveyance, so you just have to know what the solution to a certain type of encounter is. And then the game is also fairly bare bones. There's only the 5 base Rangers, and then you can eventually unlock the Green Ranger to play from. And unfortunately, it seems that the characters all have basically the same stats. I couldn't tell for sure. There are differences in animations for their combos, and so it does have spots where characters move slower or faster, but I can't tell for sure. And there's nothing in the game that really indicates it on a meta level. And like I said, like I couldn't tell, and if I can't tell, then it's not a clear distinction between these character types. And then the enemies are not particularly diverse. You're going to face a lot of the same basic putties with just different color schemes, and not even at a certain point. There's only one type of Tengu that you fight the whole time. So there's only so many foot soldiers that you'll face. And it kind of is depressing in that regard. It feels reminiscent of Streets of Rage 1, which, you know, that was a tiny game that came out very early in the Sega Genesis lifetime. So that's a classic. A game released in 2025 doesn't get that luxury. But I don't want to just attack this game because I do actually think it is pretty fun. And that fun would be especially true in multiplayer because there's a lot of chaotic fighting that could go on that would be really enjoyable with this game. And that's kind of what we're here for, right? I mean, this is nostalgia bait, right? Like this is specifically designed to feel like a 90s style arcade brawler with a property that was introduced in 1993. I mean, can you think of something that's more nostalgic? I haven't even talked about the story, which is super nostalgic. The story, the reason why it's called Rita's Rewind, ties into the broader lore of Power Rangers, which has become extremely Byzantine and ornate in a way that I absolutely adore. And recently, there was a direct-to-streaming movie on Netflix called Power Rangers Once and Always, which featured a reunion of most of the original cast and had them face off against an updated version of the original nemesis from the TV show, what they called Robo Rita, which was a way of getting around the fact that the Japanese actress had passed away who had played Rita, but they still had the voice actress. So it's a cute movie. You should check it out. But now this whole big lore that there's this new future robotic evil version of Rita who... she's a robot because her soul was purged of all evil, and so the evil is the only thing that is now in the robot. The good body is presumably still the Mystic Mother, a force of good that actually spawned a Power Ranger team, the Mystic Force. Again, Byzantine lore. I love it. So anyway, this evil Robo Rita, because she's defeated in Power Rangers Once and Always, travels back in time to try to aid her past self and defeat the original Power Rangers. Now, you would think, hey, this means that we're going to get a team up of past and future Rangers. Nope, they don't travel back in time. It's just the past Rangers, which means what this game does is it speed runs the first season of Power Rangers, at least up to the Green Ranger arc, with Robo Rita speeding up and providing new plot points to go throughout the whole session of this all. So we get a bunch of like classic monsters from the original Power Rangers run. I was really happy to see all of them. I was surprised at how well I recognize them. I realize I'm a Power Rangers fan, but there are a lot of monsters. There's a lot of episodes in that first season, let alone the run of the show in general. So it's surprising that they found ones that really stood out as being classics there. And of course, you'll get Goldar and you'll get to face off against the Dragon Zord. Unfortunately, no Scorpina. You know, it's a game that has a lot of the things that we want to see in it. It's a chance to play through season 1 of Power Rangers in a 90s beat 'em up style. And that's pretty cool. Do I wish they had at least the White Ranger? Of course I do. Do I wish they had more Rangers available, the way that the Power Rangers Shattered Grid fighting game featured so many cool options? Absolutely. That would be amazing. More Zords? Totally. Especially because it's a heads-up display sequence. Yeah. Do I wish that the Megazord fight was better? Absolutely. The Megazord fight is a chore. As far as I could tell, you can't lose it, but it's really hard to, like, basically you just have to give into the fact that, like, you just close the gap and then just, like, hit buttons as fast as you can. And that's the thing that, like, it's just, like, kind of an annoying button masher kind of mini game session. But the Megazord fights aside, which are probably the worst part of the actual game, the rest of the game is really interesting. I do really like the motorcycle sections. The individual Zord sections are really close to being great, and they're, like, fine for what they are. They're a good shooter. Like, and if you liked like Space Harrier, like it's a great sequence like that. But yeah, that's Power Rangers Rita's Rewind. It is not the best game to come of this genre. If you're looking for my personal favorite of the recent renaissance of beat 'em ups, check out Streets of Rage 4, and then check out Shredder's Revenge, because obviously you're going to check out those two. They are fantastic. And you know, there's so many great beat 'em ups, but I guess this comes down to, this game would be great if it was on sale, and if it is at the full price that it's currently being offered for, you really need to be a Power Rangers fan. But if you are a Power Rangers fan, hey, this is the thing you're here for. Like, it's exactly that. In fact, it's giving you things that you've never experienced in video game form. The Zord combat is really cool. I wish it was deeper, but it's still really cool. Actually, I will say it was very disappointing when you finally get the Dragon Zord and he just controls the exact same as the T-Rex sword. That was a little bit of a bummer there. I really wish that at least his shots were like his finger blasts instead of like a beam coming out of his mouth. Sorry, that's a totally minor spoiler that for how a character controls. But aside from that, like, the game is really fun. Again, the beat 'em up sections are perfectly fine. The Zord sections are you know, good enough. Like, they're fine in that regard. The motorcycle sections are actually like a little bit more fun because they're a little bit faster. So I really enjoy those. Yeah. One thing here's a tip. If you are playing as Kimberly, you have some advantages in the Zord sections because she is flying. And so you can go over obstacles, and there are particular areas where that is really advantageous. One of which is the Dragon Zord fight, when it is Zord on Zord before you go into the Megazord mode. The Dragon Zord's attack pattern almost like completely misses the sky. So if you attack from above, you're fine. So just don't like put yourself on ground level and you should be okay. That's just a tip for anyone out there. I was like very pleased to discover that. Like Kimberly in the Pterodactyl Zord is actually like a real highlight of this game. So check that out. But yeah, I mean, again, if you are a fan of Power Rangers, you should play this game because it's doing all the things that you wanted it to do, even if it's not the best version of that. It's a perfectly fine version of that and an enjoyable one. If you're not the biggest Power Rangers fan, but you were one and you're like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. If there's a sale, it's worth it. And if you're a beat 'em up fan, again, if there's a sale, it's probably worth it. But if you're not a big beat 'em up fan and you're not a big Power Rangers fan, obviously this is not the game for you. So yeah, so that said, I'm Case. You can find me on this network, Certain POV, on two shows. One is Another Pass, which is a movie show, and the other is Men of Steel, which is a Superman show. You can also find me on our YouTube channel, where I am the one putting up most of the videos up on there. So check that out. It's a pretty cool channel. We do D&D stuff and more Superman stuff, and then we put up some of the podcast episodes up there. So it's a good place to check out. You should head over there if you haven't already. But otherwise, thank you again for listening to me ramble, and happy gaming.
Hey.
Oh, hey, Jeff.
What's going on, guys?
Oh, talking about Superman.
Oh, cool. I could talk about Superman.
I could talk some more about Superman.
We know.
I'll bet a few people would want to get in on this.
I'm down.
You know it.
That sounds like fun. I'll do it.
Cool, let's do it. We can call the show Men of Steel.
And you can find it at certainpov.com.
Or wherever you get your podcasts.
Yay.
CPOV.
CertainPOV.com.